Traveling to Alaska on a cruise is the best option to experience the natural beauty and wildlife of the state. But for many, planning for an Alaska cruise can feel overwhelming, especially when it comes to budgeting. But given that we've sailed to Alaska several times, we're here to help. In this video, we break down all of the costs associated with traveling to Alaska. That way you know exactly how much to budget for your Alaska cruise. Up next. Welcome aboard, cruisers. I'm Don B from Eat, Sleep, Cruise, where I help you see the world one port at a time. And one of our favorite destinations to visit on a cruise is Alaska. We've sailed there several times with several different cruise lines. And while we love to go to Alaska, one thing we don't like about Alaska are the prices. So we put together this extensive video to help you budget accordingly so you know the real cost of your Alaska cruise. Now first, it's important to understand that the cost of Alaska cruise can vary widely depending on several factors. Chief among them are the cabin category you choose and the time of year you choose to sail. Not to mention, there will be associated costs not tied directly to the cruise fare. Plus, how far in advance you book the trip can also affect pricing. But you should know it's very easy to spend thousands of dollars depending on your choices. So in budgeting for your Alaska cruise, you need to include all of the costs. These include the cruise fare, plus associated taxes and fees. There will also most likely be airfare and transportation to and from the cruise port. You'll also pay for shore excursions, and you'll want to budget for things such as additional onboard purchases. You may also consider extending your trip with hotel accommodations. And regardless of the cruise, we always recommend you purchase travel insurance. Now let's take a look at how much you should allocate for each of these different categories. When it comes to choosing the right cruise ship for your Alaska cruise, costs do vary by cruise line. Currently, we've seen a trend of cruise fares rising across the board in 2023 when compared to previous years. Now, of course, remember pricing does change, and the prices we quote here are just illustrations. You do want to check with your travel agent or the cruise line for the most current up-to-date pricing. Plus, for most of these examples, we're going to focus just on 7-night round-trip cruises from Seattle, Washington. This is the most popular itinerary that many of you are probably considering. During our research, we found that most mainstream cruise lines, like Carnival Cruise Line or Royal Caribbean, are offering round-trip Alaska cruises starting around $800 to $900 per person based on double occupancy for an inside cabin. Still, even on those ships, there are other cruise cabin categories that are significantly more expensive. The cheapest celebrity cruise line round-trip Alaska cruise was starting around $800. However, a suite on that ship was going for close to $4,000 a person. You might be surprised to find out that the family-focused Disney Cruise Line is actually one of the most expensive Alaska cruises. A round-trip cruise from Vancouver starts at $1,050 per person for a family of 4, or $1,283 per person at double occupancy. If that same family of 4 wants to sail in a concierge-level cabin, the per-person cost for a family of 4 was $5,875 for a total cost of over $23,000. So as you can see, Alaska cruise prices do vary based on the cruise line and even the cabin category. Now, regardless of the cruise line, most ships offer similar types of staterooms or cabins. Typical cabin categories include insides, outsides, balconies, also referred to as veranda staterooms, and mini suites or suites. So it might be better to begin your budget around the type of cabin. Some cruisers don't care about accommodations and just want to book the least expensive room. Others will want a balcony to admire the views or some of the premium upgrades that come with suites. But once you know the ballpark categories, you can begin investigating cruise lines. Based on our research for Alaska cruise fares for 2023, inclusive of tax and fees, we created this chart, which gives you a general sense of how much each cabin category costs. So in our research, we found inside cabins ranging from around $700 to around $1,200 a person, ocean views between $800 and $2,000, balconies between $1,100 to $2,800 a person, and then mini suites and suites anywhere from $1,500 to $3,500 and more, as you saw with the example with Disney Cruise Line. Again, these are approximate values, and they were based on our research for those 7-night round-trip Alaska cruises. you might be able to find rates that are cheaper, or, on the flip side, more expensive, depending on several factors. Now, my wife and I sail as just a couple, but many cruise lines do discount the second and third person in a room for families. This discount's usually around 50% off the cruise fare of the first and second passenger. Note the third and fourth passengers will have to pay full prices for taxes and fees, which alone are $200 to $400 per person. Thus, once you start comparing the per person fare, you'll see that it'll be different as it's averaged across all the passengers in a stateroom. So let's give you an example. For instance, an inside cabin on a round-trip cruise on Princess Cruises Royal Princess out of Seattle, Washington, leaving on April 30th, starts around $720 at double occupancy for an inside room. For a family of 4, that same cabin is $2,484 for a total per person cost of $621 per person. For a balcony on the same sailing, a couple would pay just over $2,000 for a per person cost of $1,017. A family of 4 in that same balcony cabin would be paying a little over $3,600 for the cabin, with an average of about $900 per person. Of course, you might be able to stumble upon a deal or promotion like Kids Sail Free or free perks for certain bookings, making one cruise line or one cruise cabin category a better option for you. Selecting the cabin category is the main determinant of how much your Alaska cruise will cost. The second factor that will weigh heavily on the total price is the time of year you choose to cruise. By and large, the cheapest time of year to go on an Alaska cruise are the shoulder seasons. This is the beginning or the end of the cruise season. Thus, if you sail during late April or early May, or September into early October, usually you'll find the lowest Alaska cruise prices. Now, on the flip side, the most expensive time to cruise to Alaska is the middle of the season, usually July. This is the peak time of year as it's the warmest weather and coincides with summer vacation. So let's take that Princess Cruises Royal Princess cruise leaving on April 30th. If you want to go on the same exact cruise, but pick the second week of July, a balcony cabin for 2 is just over $2,000 per person. Likewise, for a family of 4, the total of the cabin now jumps up to $6,392, which has a per person cost of $1,598. So separating your cruise by a few months could literally save you thousands of dollars. So if you have your heart set on sailing during the middle of the summer, you just need to make sure to budget accordingly because you will be paying more. When going on an Alaska cruise, travelers do have the options to sail either one-way or round-trip itineraries. Those one-way cruises start in one port, usually Vancouver, British Columbia, and end in another destination, like Whittier, Alaska. The two most common departure points for round-trip cruises are again Seattle, Washington, and Vancouver, British Columbia. Now, this is not an exact science, but if you go to cruise lines' websites and you look for the cheapest Alaska cruise fares, you will find that generally one-way trips have lower starting fares than round-trip itineraries. But this can be impacted by several factors. But you do need to keep in mind that with those one-way itineraries, there's a good chance you'll pay more for flights as you are going to be flying to different destinations. But when it comes to picking either Seattle or Vancouver as an embarkation port, we actually don't find any discernible pattern with round-trip cruises from one destination being consistently more expensive or consistently cheaper. Essentially, the prices are very close, and they vary from week to week, and from cruise line to cruise line. Thus, we don't see a benefit to picking one departure point over the other when it comes to Alaska cruise prices. Likewise, for the most part, round-trip cruises from Vancouver or Seattle will visit similar ports of call. But again, you should examine the Alaska cruise itineraries to make sure that they're visiting the destinations you want to visit. So hopefully now you're armed with enough information about the cruise cabin categories and the different destinations to have a general sense of how much your cruise fares will cost. So the next item on the list, budgeting for your shore excursions. Now, I wish I could tell you that the high prices that you saw for your cruise fare don't apply to your shore excursions, but I don't want to lie to you. We're friends. And unfortunately, Alaska shore excursions are among some of the most expensive shore excursions for any cruise destination. Now, to be fair, the range does vary quite a bit. On our several trips, we've done a mix of land-based walking tours, as well as helicopter rides and float plane adventures. We've done glacier viewing, bear watching, zip lines, whale watching, and even visited a bald eagle preserve. So you can find some reasonably priced tours that give you an authentic Alaskan experience, or you can even explore some of the small Alaska towns on your own for free. But you can also splurge on some big ticket items. For instance, you can book a city tour with a stop at the Mendenhall Glacier for around $70 a person. But if you want to upgrade to a full day of sightseeing, whale watching, and a salmon bake, well, that will cost over $200 a person. For the ultimate experience, you can take one of the helicopter tours to see the nearby ice fields in Juneau. This will start around $450 per person, and you can even add a dog sledding adventure on a glacier, and that will easily be over $600, closer to $800 per person. The most popular shore excursion in Alaska is the White Pass Summit Railroad in Skagway. Alone, this tour is around $140 per person, while in Skagway you can also include a number of combo tours with the White Pass Summit that will cost you over $200 per person. During our trips, we've averaged around $150 to $200 per person per port for our shore excursions. So with 4 to 5 ports of call, cruisers can easily spend $500 to over $1,000 on excursions per person. It might be obvious, but depending on where you live, you will need to calculate in the cost of your flights for your Alaska cruise budget. If you do opt for one of those one-way cruises, either leaving or ending in Seward, Alaska, you'll need to fly to Anchorage. And let's just say that's not cheap or convenient for most cruisers. Not to mention the increasing costs to fly in 2023. Even if you plan a round-trip cruise from either Seattle, Washington, or Vancouver, British Columbia, flights are not as abundant as popular cruise ports, say in Florida. A good rule of thumb is to budget between $500 to $1,000 per person for airfare for an Alaska cruise. Although at peak times, you could spend more than that to get to more remote departure points. You also need to factor in other fees, such as luggage fees and related costs, like airport parking and transportation to and from the airport. Given the time travel, many cruisers will want to consider spending at least one pre-cruise day at a hotel, and possibly even a post-cruise day, depending on the flight schedule. For departure points like Seattle, Washington, or Vancouver, British Columbia, even a modest hotel during Alaska cruise season can go for around $200 to $300 a night. Hotels with more amenities, better locations, or premium brands can run upwards of $500 a night or more. While cruises are a great value, not everything is covered in the cruise fare, so you do need to factor in some additional costs in your complete budget. First off, there's gratuities. Except for luxury cruise lines, your fare will not include onboard gratuities, and these typically run between $13 to $18 per person per day, depending on your cabin category. Some cruise lines refer to these as service charges. These are additional daily costs that go to your stateroom attendant, the dining staff, and other crew members who work hard to make your cruise special. Many cruise lines now give you the option to prepay these charges before cruising, so you can budget accordingly. If you do not get the option or choose not to prepay, expect about $100 or so per person in general gratuities to be added to your bill at the end of the cruise. Likewise, unless you're sailing on a luxury cruise line, odds are your cruise fare does not include alcoholic beverages or premium non-alcoholic drinks. Of course, you can pay a la carte. Prices range from beers around $7 to cocktails between $9 to $15, and then a variety of glasses of wine, again usually between $9 to $15. Or you can opt for a drink package. Often drink packages run between $75 to $125 a day per person, depending on the drink package and the cruise line. Now you're going to definitely want to read the fine print here because each cruise line package is slightly different with different inclusions. Still, if you enjoy a few cocktails while on vacation, investigating these packages could save you money in the long term. Some cruise lines offer package deals that include the drink package for certain room categories. So again, upgrading your room could pay for itself if you get one of these free perks. On most ships, there are plenty of complimentary dining venues and food offerings. However, if you do want to try some of the specialty restaurants, you could easily spend $100 or more on dining. But on our experiences, you don't need to spend any money on food, unless you really want to. Many cruise lines do also offer dining packages to help reduce the cost of specialty dining if you want to dine at multiple restaurants during your trip. If you want to stay in touch while on board, you might need to purchase a cruise line's Wi-Fi. The additional cost for internet tends to run between $15 to $25 per day per device. Prices vary, of course, based on internet speeds and a number of devices in the package. Although, insider tip, When cruising Alaska, you should check with your mobile phone provider. If you have coverage when docked at the ports of call, you might not need to purchase internet for those few sea days. Like any vacation, you could rack up additional costs for things like souvenirs, meals and snacks ashore, or other general shopping or gaming while on your Alaska cruise. How much to allocate for these additional purchases varies for all travel parties. And of course, only you know how much you would spend on these additional items. For us, we collect ornaments and t-shirts from the destinations we visit, so the wife and I always budget around $100 or $200 for these purchases. I know we've covered a lot, so let's recap. Alaska cruise costs vary greatly depending on the cabin type you pick, the time of year you sail, and the onboard purchases and upgrades you opt for during your cruise. However, we put together this chart with some general pricing guidelines for the principal cost of an Alaska cruise. And as you can see, we recommend budgeting somewhere between $2,000 to up to $5,000 or more per person for your Alaska cruise. So it's certainly not crazy to think that an Alaska cruise costs a family of 4 close to $10,000 once you consider all the costs. Honestly, sailing as a couple, our previous Alaska cruises have cost us in the ballpark of $8,000 to $10,000 for each trip. And that's with us always staying in a balcony cabin and sailing during the shoulder season. We always fly economy and do try to get a good mix of shore excursions, but as you can see, cruising to Alaska certainly isn't cheap. Now, of course, if you still need more help planning Alaska cruise, don't worry, we have you covered. We suggest you check out our top 25 Alaska cruise tips and tricks video right here on YouTube. In that video, we give you tips on how to save money, pick the right cruise line and ship, as well as tips to make the most of your time on the ship and ashore. That way your Alaska cruise is smooth sailing.